All right. Welcome, friends, to the final edition of 2017 of Feature Friday. Today, we're going to do just a little bit something different. Make sure that audio is working. I have a little bit of a cold, so hopefully that's not too frustrating and people will bear with me here. But things are going very well. 2017 was an amazing year. We had so many things happen, both in the industry, but also for CodeFresh and for Kubernetes, for Docker, all this other stuff. And what I wanted to do today in a fairly short video is go through some of the best things about 2017, and then next week we'll get back to our normal, technical commentary, our how-tos and guides and things like that. So to start off, at the beginning of the year, right around the time that we launched CodeFresh, which was January, it was earlier when we launched general availability for CodeFresh, we sat down and we had a meeting. A strategic meeting. We said, what's going to happen the next year and what's really critical for us to support? And the big question that was on the table was, is it going to be Docker Swarm? Is it going to be Kubernetes? Is it going to be Marathon? What's going to be the orchestrator of choice for everyone going into 2017 and then beyond? And we sat down and we sketched it all out. We did tons of research. Our engineers spent a lot of time going really deep on those things. We examined the communities. And finally, and I remember this was really cool, our CEO sat down and he said, listen, here's what I think is going to happen. He said, Google's leading the way with GKE. I think that by the end of the year that Microsoft will have managed Kubernetes. I bet Amazon will announce it. I bet that Mesosphere will announce that they're switching support to Kubernetes. And this was the craziest one, and I didn't believe it when he said it. He said, and I bet that Docker themselves will actually go all in on Kubernetes and announce support for it on Docker Enterprise. Guess what? All of it happened. All of it happened. Every single prediction came true beyond our wildest dreams. Not only that, Rancher has also gone all in on Kubernetes. Everybody has gone all in on Kubernetes. It is the standard for running containers now. Now, does that mean that everybody's using it? Not at all. We're still very much in the early adopter phase of Kubernetes. I mean, it's mature enough as a platform that people like eBay and GitHub and companies like that are using Kubernetes very effectively without issues, or at least major issues. And so we have a very clear template of what the future is going to look like. That is Kubernetes is the winner. So that was an amazing win for 2017. That sets up a next question though. 2018, what will be the standard way of defining your application if you're using Kubernetes? So there are about 15 different competing standards for those that you don't know. We actually sat down, we had a similar meeting that we had about container orchestrators, and we had a similar one about, and this happened over several months, and we talked to people from the Google engineering team, we talked to people from Bitnami, we talked to people from all over the industry, and to try to decide what's going to be the way of defining your application. We even started writing our own spec because we didn't think it even were there yet. And then finally we kind of settled back in on Helm because Helm has made the most progress there, and it actually is really, really good. So we actually adopted Helm fully internally, dog-fooded our support for it extensively, and then released it out into the wild back at KubeCon, which everybody saw. So this was, I think that this is going to be the story in 2018. 2017 was about getting Kubernetes adoption to happen. I think 2018 we'll see Helm taking over as the standard, and it's what I'm seeing across lots of different companies and people that are adopting Kubernetes in a big way, is that they're adopting Helm. So that's really exciting. The other things, and then I have I'll share some images and stuff, and we'll talk about some of the stuff that CodeFresh launched in 2017. But the other really big thing that happened, and this was a bit of a surprise to me, is we knew that Amazon was going to launch a Kubernetes service. I mean, we just knew because they just had to. There was no way that Amazon was going to exist without Kubernetes. Why? Well, Google basically bet, if you don't know that, most of you probably already know this, you don't need me to tell you, but Google basically made a bet with Kubernetes. They said, we really wanted to get into the cloud game, and Amazon has this stranglehold that nobody can break. So what if we made a service that was open source and it was portable and it became the standard way of doing things? And then if we did that, wouldn't it allow people to move between clouds with more fluidity? And then we could help break this stranglehold that Amazon had in the market. This is my impression, right, of reading what Google's doing from the outside. And so they created Kubernetes, they promoted it, and Azure was like, we really like that idea. We're going to jump all in on that, and we're going to have our own twist, right? Like we're going to have like Windows containers too, and we're going to have Windows Kubernetes too. We have like the interesting stuff we're doing with the Azure container instances, the ACIs. And so they have their own little twist when they're like, we really like this Kubernetes thing. And of course you have all of the people jumping on board to build Kubernetes and adopt it. So you've got, OpenShift, you've got CoreOS, you've got Apprenda, you've got Stack Point Cloud, amazing company. All these people that are building on Kubernetes. So it became very clear that Kubernetes is going to be the standard, and people are running people were running clusters on Amazon, right? Like they were using kops, right, to spin up clusters and manage them, which is I have to admit it's pretty fun. I've used kops myself. I wrote a blog post about it, and so we knew that Amazon had to come up with a new service. We knew that they were going to have some sort of managed Kubernetes. And they finally announced it. And when we walked around KubeCon and look at the booth and you talk to people at the Amazon booth, it became very clear that they don't actually really want you to use Kubernetes. They really want you to use Fargate, their new container-oriented service. Fargate is a lot like Azure container instances in some ways. The whole goal is that you don't have to worry about the orchestrator, though the way it works right now is actually uses ECS to run all the Fargate instances. And deploying to Fargate is very similar to deploying to ECS, and so we actually should be able to support it pretty easily. So anyway, the point with that is that this is all really interesting stuff that's happened in 2017. Really exciting for the industry. But I actually want to share today the best stuff that we were able to launch at CodeFresh. So we did hundreds of releases over the year. We had tons and tons of changes, too many to enumerate. But we had a bunch that I think were really exciting, and I wanted to share with you today. So I'm going to switch the view here, and we're going to do a quick CodeFresh 2017 year in review. So what was the starting at the beginning of the year? What did we do? Well, first thing in January, we launched GA and actually had people come in and start using CodeFresh for the first time. That was pretty exciting. Oh, I have to switch my view here. I'm sorry. There we go. I'll move myself. So that was really exciting, obviously, and we immediately started making changes in February. We added support for build badges, multi-service repos. If you have kind of a mono repo approach to your application, that was supported. And then we introduced this feature called YAML logging, which basically made it so that you could, for every single build, you could see all of the instruction set that went into it. So as you have changing YAML, you can track that between builds. So those were great features. And then going forward into the year, in April we launched our enterprise version, so you could run CodeFresh on your own infrastructure. And we initially had kind of two different ways of supporting this. The first was we had a bring your own node, so you can actually just connect a node to CodeFresh, and all of your stuff stays on that node. all of your proprietary information, all of your code, all that action takes place on your own infrastructure, so you don't expose anything externally. But it also means that you don't really, and it basically just has an agent that updates by itself. So think of it as the CodeFresh agent that runs on your own nodes. And the nice thing about that is that you can basically run CodeFresh with all of the joy of SaaS, where you don't really have to worry about keeping it updated or anything like that. But also with all the security kind of extra stuff that you can do with like a virtual private cloud or whatever. So that was really popular. We also released, and this was maybe a little bit later and a little bit more quietly, as our enterprise version, we also packaged CodeFresh as a Helm chart. So we have customers, and I can't name their names unfortunately in public like this, but who deploy CodeFresh using a Helm chart. So that's really exciting. In May, we hit 500,000 Docker images built for our users. Woo! 500,000. So we went from zero basically to 500,000 from January to May, which was really exciting. Really incredible amount of growth there and adoption from people coming in and using CodeFresh to build their stuff. Oh, one thing I didn't mention, when we launched, so back in January, and this blows my mind because going over all the stuff that's launched this year, when we launched in at the beginning of 2017, we basically had two main features. We had our pipelines. So our CodeFresh pipelines are basically Docker and Docker as a service, which might be the simplest way to explain it. They're really powerful, really interesting, really exciting, fresh approach on building automation pipelines. That's a very Docker native, Docker first kind of approach. And the second thing we had were on-demand environments, so you could actually spin up your application on demand and use it as part of a pipeline. Really exciting stuff. It allowed people to do things like have a one-off environment for every branch they were working on, or for every pull request they got. It also allowed them to do things like run a performance test on an application, on a change that they were making. It's basically doing integration testing on demand, right? So that was really cool stuff. That was really cool, and it was pretty powerful, and we had all that adoption. We got those 500,000 Docker images built. A big part of that that pipeline was that, and is that it uses basically really smart layer caching so that Docker builds go really fast. So that was kind of one of the key innovations there that we figured out how to do. It just reuses the volume and keeps the cache so that stuff builds really fast, which is great. It builds even faster if you're on a pro account, but for basic and free, you still get some of that benefit. So the next thing in June, we had support for all major source code management. So that meant not just GitHub and Bitbucket, but GitHub Enterprise and Bitbucket Server, Bitbucket Data Center, which is of course my personal favorite if you know anything about my background. And then of course adding support for GitLab. So this brought us into the position of having support for all major source code management. Now, does that mean that you can't use other source code management with CodeFresh? No, you technically can, but it just requires some more customization on your part. It's a little bit more work to make it work out of the box. But this stuff is all just click, log in, and all of your stuff is available. Ta-da! Really, really excited about that. And actually, when we launched GitLab support, because GitLab CI exists, of course, and so people use that to accomplish some of the things they can do with CodeFresh. They're not all of them. But we've actually seen a ton of GitLab users really hungry for this product, and basically what CodeFresh does. So that's exciting. In July, we launched our free private Docker registry. Now, if you haven't used CodeFresh, you might not know that we have a free private Docker registry built in. Why did we do that? So there are a couple of reasons that we built a Docker registry in. One, we're really good partners with companies like JFrog, and of course with Google Cloud, with Amazon. And so we support, ECS and GCR and Bintray or Artifactory or whatever. And basically we have support for all those things. So why would we have a registry built? Why would we add our own registry built in? Well, One reason is that we find that a lot of people want to have multiple registries. There are a lot of reasons why. One is that a lot of people want to have a registry that's just for production ready stuff. So that's where they'll use like a JFrog to accomplish that. And then they want to have a registry where stuff can be more in flux. And CodeFresh basically provides that first layer registry where, look, every single image you build is going to be here. If it's broken, it's going to be here. And that's really useful because engineers need a place where they can pull down images to work with them, debug them, fix them, that kind of thing. The other reason that we did this is because this Docker registry basically has what amounts to like a direct fiber connection to our SaaS build infrastructure. So image pulling is generally faster because we have this embedded registry. The other thing that's sort of key for us there, which will become apparent, is I think in the next image. Just kidding, it's in 2 more images. We'll come back to it. So in August, we hit 1 million Docker images built. Really excited about hitting a milestone through a little party internally. And in August, one of our most important integrations launched, which was our direct integration into GKE. At the time, it was called Google Container Engine. They've since changed the name to Google Kubernetes Engine. And that basically makes it so that when you're inside of CodeFresh and you want to add a cluster from GKE, you can just sign in with Google and select the project and the cluster and hit go and you're done. It's totally seamless, amazing experience that people really, really love. And this was basically the first way that we supported some of the finer points of working with Kubernetes. Of course, since then we've added Kubernetes support for every provider. If you're using IBM Cloud, formerly IBM Bluemix, if you're using COPS, if you're using OpenShift, we have people using OpenShift with CodeFresh. If you're using a custom cluster running on a pile of Raspberry Pis inside of your basement, you can connect CodeFresh to that and it will work. At KubeCon, I saw a demonstration where this guy had put Kubernetes on a couple of smartwatches. And I thought, I bet CodeFresh works perfectly with those dang watches, man. So that was exciting. And going forward, that was in September, we launched the Kubernetes dashboard. So the Kubernetes dashboard, if you haven't seen it, basically gives you a view of all your clusters, all your namespaces for multiple providers. You can see what images are running there. You can see the status of everything. You can figure out what their endpoints are. You can go in and reconfigure services, add new services, pull old ones down, all that kind of stuff, which is really exciting. And then in October, we added customizable image annotation support. So this is the other key element for why we have an embedded registry. If you are looking at an image, usually images are sort of a black box, right? You don't know what's going on with it. You don't know where it came from. You don't know who worked on it. You don't know what change set caused the creation of this image. All you basically have is the hash on the image, and you don't really know much else. So what we've done with CodeFresh is because look, we're going to build the image, right? We're going to run tests on the image. We're going to validate that image. We know where it came from in Git. Let's put all that information on the image so that when you're looking at an image, you can actually see all that information that's there and see exactly everything that's happened with the image. Now, this is actually this is kind of jumping forward, but this is actually an open standard called OpenGriefus. OpenGriefus, I don't know how to say it right, which you could read a blog post about that on our blog. In November, we introduced a ton of usability updates. So we introduced inline YAML editing, which basically makes it so you can take a CodeFresh pipeline, convert it to YAML on the fly, and then just write YAML directly instead of having to put it in your repository and then run the webhook again. So that's really convenient way to work with, and I showed a bunch of that in previous videos. We also added shared pipelines, webhooks, and multi-provider support for Kubernetes. We basically expanded that out so we could just support any type of cluster. So that was really exciting. And so we've seen a lot of clusters added to CodeFresh. We started with GKE. We felt it was really strategically important for us to be there first, and Google's been amazing partners for us. But we also have people using Kubernetes on Amazon, on Azure. I'm wearing a CoreOS hat right now. You can use it with CoreOS. Why not? So that's pretty exciting. And then finally in December, we launched Helm support publicly. We've been dogfooding it for months. We had it being in testing for months with different customers of ours, and felt like Helm was really in a good place to launch public support for it. So that is the 2017 year in review. It's been a very exciting, very fun year for all of us. For CodeFresh, it's been amazing. And I think for the industry as a whole, it's just been an amazing year. So I think 2018 is going to be really positive. I think we're going to see a lot of really great stuff happening. We're going to be at Helm Summit in February. So if you're going to be in Portland, come to that. We're going to be at KubeCon in Europe, DockerCon again this year. Amazon's doing some cool events. We'll probably run some more meetups. It's just going to be a really exciting year, because if you think about just adoption, if you've read Crossing the Chasm, you know that there's this pattern that every technology adoption curve follows. And it starts with like the early adopters, and then you get into like the early majority, and then you get into the late majority, and then the laggards, and that's when you get kind of total market penetration. And Kubernetes is so much buzz that it almost feels like, oh, it's already here, it's already done, everybody's adopted it. But that's like living in the Bay Area. We just get the sense that like everybody lives in the future. And I think was it Asimov that said that the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed yet? That's where Kubernetes is. It is the future, and it's here, but it's not evenly distributed yet. Not everybody has adopted it yet. There's still a lot of adoption that needs to happen. So in that Crossing the Chasm, we're still very much in that early adopter phase. And you're going to see, I think in 2018, we're going to shift into early majority, and you're going to see this huge spike of adoption of people just clamoring on to Kubernetes and moving their apps there. And one of the things that I'm really excited to see, because I think enterprise has led the adoption of Kubernetes, I think in 2018, we're going to see startups starting to really get on that train. And that's going to change the numbers of Kubernetes users dramatically. And it's also going to bring a lot of new blood to the community. And the community is already huge and very popular and frankly very well organized, thanks to, in large part, to the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. They've done an amazing job. Google's done an amazing job. Microsoft's done an amazing job. It's been a really, really great community, really effective community that has a lot of support, a lot of engineering talent going on into it. So I think that in 2018, we're going to see all the fruits of that pay off. We'll see mass adoption. We'll see a huge community flowing into Kubernetes. And I also think we're going to see Helm become the de facto standard for how you define your application. So that's why we built support into it for CodeFresh. If I'm wrong, we'll support that other thing. But for now, I think it's going to be Helm. I think that Bitnami has spoken. Google is, I think, in a good position to adopt Helm. We'll see what they do. I don't know. But I think that's where it's going. So there you go. That is our 2017 year in review. I hope you have an excellent New Year's. And of course, we will see you next week in 2018. See ya.